Like Josh's was a man of mask. I can't remember what mine was.
The Shell of a Man.
The Shell of a Man.
Part 1 and Part 2.
Hey.
Shell of a man.
I was still learning how to give my testimony at that point. Yeah. I was very long-winded, so mine took 2 episodes.
All right, we are live on YouTube currently.
Got you.
All right, we ready?
Well, we're trying to decide, because usually when we don't have a episode title, we'll come back and recut the introduction to include the title after we have done the episode.
Right.
That way we've got an idea of what the title could be.
Yeah.
We don't have a title for this one coming into it.
Sometimes it's like
what
a
do you recommend
catchphrase that comes out of it, and you're just like, oh.
You want us to just go through it, and then we'll come back and recut the intro?
Yeah, we can do that. Or if you don't have an intro written out that you can.
So we got an intro.
It's
but as we go through the intro, we go like, this is episode 60, and we'll give the title.
Kind of
But
like
we usually
this
get
is
the title.
59, Rebuilding the Ruins.
From Chaos to
Boom.
Kindness, the Danny Ivy story.
Hey, there it is.
It's whatever works for you.
Chaos to Kindness.
We got another one with chaos, though. Would you think people confuse that? I do like the chaos to kindness, though. That does have a.
You're welcome.
I want to bring you on as a consultant.
You're welcome.
Brother Phoenix,
For
show analyst.
For Damian Donald's episode, we couldn't figure that out, and I was like, let's just call it from drug dealer to hope dealer, and then call it good.
We're good. We're going to go ahead and roll it. We're going
Chaos to Kindness.
chaos to kindness.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
You want to do that?
Start
Yeah.
recording.
What, that title?
The episode number and title. You want to
Want
do
me
that
to
part?
do it?
I mean,
Yeah,
you
I
got
got
that,
you.
Danny? From Chaos to Kindness.
That's fine.
All right, okay.
We're
All
good.
right, ready?
Yep.
All right. Let's start recording on the mixer in 5, 4, 3, giggity.
Hello, recovery fan. Welcome back to the Unashamed Recovery Podcast, where we believe there is healing in the story of our scars and that it is okay to not be okay.
It is our mission to break the shame and stigma of addiction and recovery by sharing real stories of real addiction from real people in real sobriety and real recovery.
We share stories straight out of the pit, stories of hope. I'm your host, Josh,
I'm your co-host, Drew.
and we're missing Palmer again.
But we have a guest. We have
Host,
a guest host today.
Brother Phoenix,
Running
Brother
the
Phoenix.
Black Sheep Recovery Warfare Podcast.
filling in
Welcome
for
on
the
in.
second episode in a row. Palmer, you're fired. Put that on a
I'm
T-shirt.
talking about this is like the third time he's been fired. Fourth time he's been fired from a podcast.
John,
We're counting this one to attendance.
this is the fifth time that I've had a fire from Unashamed. He just keeps showing up.
He's like a bad penny.
I'll fire him and he'll show up, and I gotta kind of promote him to the employee of the month, and then I have to fire him. But anyway, we've got John Gallagher filling in for Palmer for this episode, and yeah, so
I'm about to ask you. Look,
roll that intro.
The Unashamed Recovery Podcast.
with Josh and Drew,
Josh and Drew,
Dun, dun, dun,
not
dun.
Palmer.
not Palmer.
All right, so this is episode number 60. Drew, what is it?
Chaos to Kindness.
The Danny Ivy story.
Danny Ivy story. And we are joined with a guest today. We are joined by Danny Ivy. Danny is the ministry leader of Celebrate Recovery in Vicksburg, Mississippi, at Foundry.
Right.
At Foundry Church. And actually, we were not planning on having Danny. We had somebody completely different scheduled. They dropped the ball on us. John came through, able to bring Danny in, and just a small world. Because I've got so many mutual friends with Danny's brother, and it's so it's small world. It's a small world of Mississippi recovery.
Well, he was literally the
It's a
first
small
person that
world.
came to mind when I saw the post. And I was like, immediately I thought it just popped in my. I know it's the Holy Spirit. It's Danny Ivy.
Right.
Because I've been, I'd just seen him a couple nights ago at the event, and we'd talked a couple times on the phone about some other things, and this is how it worked out.
God moment.
Well, welcome, Danny.
That's right.
Welcome. Big welcome from Unashamed.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, Danny, tell us a little bit about what got you started in recovery. What was your drug of choice?
Methamphetamines.
Well,
Been down that road.
I don't have a personal story with that.
I spent
That
a
is-
long time down that road.
That is outside of my area, but man, we have talked with so many people. I've lost count. We have talked with so many people that have been down that road. And I'm just going to stop and say right now, for you to be sitting here, for John to be sitting here, for Drew to be sitting here, it's a miracle.
Absolutely.
Not everybody makes it out of that road.
2%.
That is right. Yes.
2%.
You got the tattoo?
I got the tattoo. It's under my little dinosaur on my hand.
2%. Man.
Well,
it's like
it's a miracle.
the statistic is 2% of heroin methamphetamine users are come out of it and never return to it. It's only 2%. We're trying to get that number up.
2%.
And that's not just intravenous. That's across the board.
Yeah, it's across the board. Yeah.
Because I know somebody at one point was like, "No, it's just intravenous." You know,
no, it's
no. So it's everybody.
Well, anyway, man. Regardless, intravenous or not, it's a miracle. Like with Amber, when Amber came on and shared, like with hers, I think hers was. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was it 25 years?
Yeah.
And I told her, I was like, Amber, for you to be able to sit here and tell us this story the way that she told it. Like,
not even just that, the way her mind could still articulate.
Yeah. It's amazing that we don't have brain damage.
Yeah, I was like,
that's the part.
I told her, I was like, it is a miracle. Walking, talking, miracle.
Yeah. And Danny is certainly that. Because if you knew what y'all are about, the story that y'all are about to hear is going to blow your mind.
So what you're saying is we need to stop.
Yeah, I need
and
y'all to.
And
I'm gonna need y'all to.
And I need to get some popcorn.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. So Danny, if you just take us back to let's go back to where it all began with that.
Chapter 1.
Yeah, chapter 1.
What does your chapter 1 look like?
Okay.
What would be the title of that chapter 1?
Born in a pit.
Ooh,
yes,
Nice.
that's a good title for a chapter.
Okay.
that is a.
But let me just say this real quick before he starts. I go way back with these Ivy boys, like from elementary school. Okay, so I've seen a lot. I bore witness to a lot.
Danny, is that scary?
Scary is the word I'm talking about.
Did you see his face kind of change?
See, I'm trying to build this up for the listeners because it's worse than scary. It's terrifying.
Right.
Okay, so I'm going to give him the mic.
Wait.
All right, so I was born in South Jackson, and when I was born, my dad was in Hinds County Jail on a capital murder charge. My mom was a teenager; she was a drug addict, and so my father ended up getting a life sentence. And I grew up in an environment where everyone in my family did drugs and alcohol, or was in and out of prison, except for one aunt. And so we moved around from place to place, boyfriend to boyfriend, whatever she had going on. My mom was a runner, so whenever things got tough, we'd just pack up and leave. And that was just the environment I grew up in, was chaos.
So nothing solid, really.
No,
that's what it sounds like.
We bounced around quite a lot, and there was a lot of violence, and I just, to me, that was normal life. And me and my brother and my sister we kind of were stuck in the middle of that, right? And in that environment, because we moved so much, I really didn't have any lifelong friendships.
Or stability.
Right. And you couldn't invite friends over to spend the night or nothing like that because there, might be a needle on the toilet seat or there might be a fight break out or whatever it was. And just that's the cycle I began in. And so when I think I was 11, my dad had made parole from prison. Back then a life sentence you could make parole on, and he made parole. And so we moved to Louisiana to stay with him, and I was there maybe 2 or 3 months, and then he died in a car wreck, drinking and driving, and that's kind of when I just kind of started really acting out. I can remember not crying during the funeral. I was really just stunned, you know what I mean? And because for me, up until I met him, it was always that when my dad gets home, things will be different. You know what I mean? He come from a good family, and he just got caught up with my mom's family is why he ended up in prison. And so that was always my thing. When my dad gets home, things are going to be different. And so then he gets home and he dies, and I didn't cry or anything up until we were leaving the funeral. They were lowering him to the ground. It just really, I'm going back to Jackson, and it's never going to be different. And so
Man.
I got back to Jackson, and that's when I started getting in trouble, like getting arrested for stealing and fighting in school and just whatever came about. You know what I mean? It was pretty much me taking care of myself, and once I started getting arrested, I remember I think I was 13, and my aunt, the only family member that didn't do drugs or anything, she was a Christian. She come to my house. It was like the third time I got arrested back to back to back. And she told me, she said, Danny, some people can get away with it. Some people can't. You'll see people doing things and getting away. She said, but you'll never get away with anything. We have prayed over you. Me and your grandmother prayed over you, and you're going to be a man of God. So you might as well give up now. And I laughed about it. You know what I mean? Like,
Listen, let me just say real quick, man. If you've got a praying mother or a praying grandmother, you've got something powerful in your toolbox.
Better
man,
watch out,
for
because
sure.
they gonna.
Well,
let
let me tell you. Let me tell you why I say that, man. Because you know, y'all know I was in that for like 30 years,
Yeah.
right? But up until my mother passed away, that's when the real chaos really came for me. You know, it's like after she passed, I didn't have that prayer in my corner.
You didn't
know
have
what
the
I'm saying?
umbrella.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You know, it was like a protection. But after that was gone, that's when I really started having a lot of trouble with the law and other things. Anyway, please.
but I can remember her telling me, you're going to be a preacher. And I would laugh. And she said that, for the next 10, 15 years, however long she had left, every time I'd hear from her, Danny, you might as well give it up. And she was right. I never got away with anything. Ever. I was in detention center maybe 25 times.
Wow.
Just back to back. I got comfortable there. Going there, the guards all knew me. I was
Almost institutionalized, just and not even realizing it, just because
Right.
it felt so familiar. Yeah,
It's amazing what you can get used to.
But hearing the beginning of your story to this part, I mean, that was almost your foundation. That was almost the continuity. for
Right.
you. That was what was consistent.
right. That's exactly right. And it was what it was expected of me.
Yeah.
When I'd get out of detention center and go back to school, they expected me to act up. That was my reputation, and that's what I thrived on, and that was my identity. And at the juvenile detention center, I was the little white boy that was always there, and back then I was really the only white kid there. And so the lady guards just loved me.
Right.
I was their little white boy, and they took care of me. You know what I mean? And I was comfortable there. I got 3 meals a day, and I had my own room, and I knew everybody, and nobody bothered me, and so I never minded being there. And I would get out, and within a month or two, I'd be right back. And I was drinking and smoking weed and things of that nature, but nothing really hardcore till they sent me to Oakley Training School when I was 16. And I got out then, and things just changed. I can remember when I was about 13, my mom's boyfriend jumped on me. And I really couldn't do anything with him. I was 13 years old. But I ran away, and I come back 3 days later expecting him to be gone, and he was still there. You know what I mean? And my mom was like justifying it, and he was just drunk. He didn't mean it. And that just that built a wall right there. Up until that point, it had always been me and my mom, and I'd been with her through all the chaos. I just felt like she turned her back on me, and then I would never
almost like
stay
she
home.
chose a side.
Yeah.
Right.
But after
Yeah,
you've been
that was,
choosing her
I mean,
for so
sure.
long, yeah, I mean, y'all were two peas in a pod.
And then all of a sudden, this guy puts his hands on me, and she keeps him around. And so when I got out of Oakley Training School, I beat him up. You know what I mean? Like I'm not 14.
Let me explain. So when Danny says he beat somebody up, it's not. I just beat somebody up.
Yeah, I kind of figured. Yeah, I imagine it's extensive.
And so then at that point, I started running with my uncles and older cousins, and the hardcore drugs, came into play. And my girlfriend moved in with me, and I thought I was an adult at 16 years old. I was treated like an adult.
See, you were exposed to, some Christian influence, but you didn't have a father figure in your life. And then your mother broke your trust.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was just me and my girlfriend and my little brother, and getting arrested and being on the news at 16 years old, and teenage drug deals and drug bust and things of that nature, and running with grown men. And I don't know, I got certified as an adult when I was 17, and they sent me to prison.
Whew.
So you never really had a childhood.
Not really. Now when I look back on it, you realize, like, I would kill somebody if they had my child in the middle of that.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And but I mean they come from a brokenness too, and so
And that's the thing with brokenness. Brokenness gets passed down.
absolutely,
Yep.
It's generational.
Comes to
Generational curse.
normalcy.
Yeah.
You
You
know,
know, the different types of brokenness. I mean, that's generational curses. You know, that's what it turns into.
yeah.
absolutely. So when you read in the Bible and it speaks of iniquity, like sometimes it'll say sin and sometimes it'll say iniquity. And when it speaks of iniquity, that is inherited sin, and that's what I've learned.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Very good.
Yeah.
Now, that's one of them things where I knew it,
But you didn't really
but I really
realize it.
didn't realize it. And
didn't
when he
click.
put it like that, I was like, oh,
Makes
yep,
sense.
Yep, that is it.
Absolutely.
Man. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people want to just refuse to believe that it can be passed down and inherited like that. But in our what was
Well, I
it,
mean,
3 episodes ago, we talked about
generational curses.
generational curses and how it's passed down.
Yep.
And the Bible even talks about it.
Yeah.
And if the Bible talks about it,
It's true.
it's true.
It's true.
Well, I mean, you got to think though. If the Bible's mentioning it, you're already, and if you're that person that's having to deal with inequity, you know, you're coming up already in the negative. You know what I'm saying? Like
You're already
in the negative.
Yep.
So, like with my biological mother, what I do know of her, you know, is that she was a drug addict, and that's why I was given up at birth. But I mean, that was an inequity that I already had on my back,
Right.
you know, coming into it, and I didn't realize it. My parents didn't realize it. They didn't realize how serious it was going to be, and then, you know, I lived it out.
Yeah.
But,
Right, you start. Yeah, I mean it's I don't know. There's a connection there, and there's a disconnect that a lot of people. You know, we are grown, and you have your own choices to make, and so forth. But everyone comes from some type of brokenness.
Yeah.
Right.
100% agree.
And the way we learn to deal with it is absolutely inherited. Right.
Yeah.
So I watched my family and my mother and aunts and uncles and all that. I learned the way they dealt with it was drugs and alcohol. And as a young kid, I hated it. I hated drugs, and I'll never do that when I grow up because of the way it affected me and my little brother. And
But
so,
to you, it was the only answer.
and then it ends up being that's the only thing I know, you know, to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to Parchman when I was 7. Well, I was actually 18. I sat in county jail until I turned 18, and I wasn't uncomfortable with it. You know, I'd been through Oakley Training School a few times and the juvenile system, and I knew a lot of the guys, but it was a different ball game. It was serious now, and
they put
so-
you out there on the farm.
I get into the gang stuff, and for me, I decided, you know, I made a decision that this is my life and this is what the hand I've been dealt, so I'm gonna be the best at it, and I devoted my life to being a leader of the gang and you know, a convict, and
Quick question. At this point, how many years had they sentenced you?
10.
10. Mandatory? Or?
No. I didn't have to do. I got out when I was 21.
No.
And you did all that time at Parchman?
Yeah, the first time was all in Parchman.
Man, that's a rough
Yeah, it's
place
pretty
to
rough.
do some time at 18.
What do I know?
Man.
Right.
Woo.
And so
I mean, I made it there when I was 30. You know, that was a shock and awe.
Man, I tell you what, I was
You know?
blessed, man. I got sent to. I mean, the 1 year that I did a lot of jail time, right? You know, county jail time in that 30 years. But God really protected me from that because, like, when I came out of quick bed from CMCF, they sent me to like this little sweet gig in Lucedale where there was no, you know,
Yeah.
You were at a work camp.
no. I mean,
What
in
work
Lucedale,
I want to say Lucedale's regional.
yeah, it
Oh,
was
yeah.
original, and like you know, there was no contraband. There was no. I mean, there was no. I mean, it was sweet. I'm not going to get into that, but I mean, it's just I was really I had a lot of anxiety and stress about either going to Greene County or Parchman. I mean, I just did not want to go through that. I'm not built for that, you know.
Greene County's something else now.
Yeah,
That's all. Greene County is
concrete.
all.
yeah.
jungle,
I
that's
don't
what they
like
call it.
I don't like washing underwear. I just you know.
We don't have enough time in this episode to talk about Greene County.
Right.
We will redirect immediately.
Anyway, back to you, Danny.
So you're up at Parchman. You've been thrown into that. And how does somebody who you've grown up not being able to handle, like you handle stuff with drugs and alcohol, and you're at the Parchman, you're in the most stressful environment.
right,
How are you dealing with it? How are you coping with that?
just focusing on surviving. You know what I mean? Like, and for me, survival meant working out all the time. You know what I mean? Putting up this front that, hey guys, I'm not prey, I'm predator. You know what I mean? And so you stay in shape and you work out and mind your own business and just get involved. That's what I did. I got involved in whatever was going on. You know, if there was some way to get some drugs, I wanted them. Or if there was, you know, some violence to be done, I want to be involved in it. And I guess at a young age, I learned, you know, the survival things, because when you got people incarcerated, men incarcerated, there's all this anger and all this stuff is bottled up inside them, and they're looking for somebody to lash out to.
It's a lot of plotting.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a
Really
lot of
is.
plotting that goes into play.
And
Like,
so
you always have to watch your back. I mean,
everybody wants to be the big man on campus.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And if you're not striving to be the big man on campus, you're one of the guys they're using to be the big man on campus. And I decided off the gate I'm not going to be one of those guys. And through that, you know, I got a reputation. And, I mean, not a reputation to be feared or nothing, but he's not worth the effort. Because
one not to be toyed with.
Right.
Yeah. That's one you don't want to fool with.
And
Stay away from that one.
And so I got out when I was
that one right
21.
There. Back up.
And I got out at 21 just wide open. You know what I mean? I had a lot of resentment towards my family because you know, before I went to Parchman, I was robbing houses and robbing people and robbing drug dealers, and me and my brothers were doing all this stuff, you know, and my uncles and aunts and the stuff, they would sit in the background and just reap the benefits of it. And so then when I got busted and I went to prison, I didn't hear from any of them. You know what I mean? It was like, you know, good luck. And
just left you out there to hang dry.
right, you know what I mean? And so when I got out, I really didn't have any. I was just mad, man, and just I didn't last a year. It was drugs and chaos and violence and just about. I was out about 10 months. I guess I was out on a couple different bonds. I wouldn't have made it 10 months, but about 10 months, and then I went back. They gave me 10 years, and man, I remember sitting in CMCF and with a fresh 10-year sentence. And back then, you did no less than 8.5 on a 10. And I was just mad. Like, I went into the courtroom to get it. I went for an open plea, just threw myself to the mercy of the court. And the guy in front of me was in there for a sex charge with a 12-year-old girl. And he didn't give it 2 years. So I'm thinking, well, I might not be that bad off. And then they gave me 15, suspended 5, and 10 to serve. And I was just mad. You know what I mean? I was mad at God and life. And so when I hit Greene County in 1997, I stayed in the middle of some violence and whatever was going on. I really was really angry. And so for 2 years, that was my drug of choice for 2 years, was just fighting and getting in the middle of stuff.
It's amazing you said that way, that you compared violence and anger to a drug.
Because it absolutely is.
That is amazing, because like that's something easily addicted to. Like,
I mean, the dopamine in your brain responds to anger just like it does a hit of
the adrenaline rush you get from from that is intense. I know.
Well, you know,
it's a different high, but it's a high. You know,
back last year we had an episode on anger, and we had read on some study, and I can't remember now, it's been so long, but it was something about anger is one of the very few things that your brain will actually readjust and get used to, and it'll almost be like a drug in itself. It will rewire the pathways in your brain. Yeah. And it will get to where your body relies on it more and more and more. Yeah. Anger. People don't want to talk about anger. Yeah. They don't want to give that one credit. Anger is.
Well, to me, it sounds like Danny, from start to finish, from chapter 1 to whatever chapter we're in right now, it's been nothing 21. But anger.
Chapter 21.
21. Just throwing it out there.
Just
throw a number.
Well, before we go any further, so where were you at in Greene County? Were you over in Area 1 or Area 2? Were you over in the Thunderdome? Where were you at?
On the new compound?
Ooh,
Area 2.
That's Area 2.
Area 2.
Yeah.
Whew.
Yeah, it was
they were cracking heads over there
all day long.
Because that's I remember whenever I was about to go the first time, I was worried about going to Greene County because they said you don't want to go to the Thunderdome. I was like, what's the Thunderdome? And they started explaining it.
It's a Mel Gibson movie from 1984.
No,
No.
not that version of it. That was like that's either you're gonna
Wasn't
make it
Tina-
out alive or you ain't gonna make it.
Wasn't
period.
Tina Turner in that one?
Yeah, she was.
Sorry.
She definitely wasn't in Greene County,
Right.
but
Well, she probably was, but it wasn't.
It wasn't that Tina Turner.
true.
So anyway, oh man, that's a hard stint right there.
Right.
Area 2, Greene County, 8.5 minimum is what you're gonna have to serve on that, man.
That was back when they did the 20%, wasn't it?
Well, it was 85%.
85%. Yeah.
I have another
Now
question.
it's the 20%.
At-
That's what they got now.
You know, at this point in Greene County in your life, I mean, were you using meth or?
No, you weren't
Okay,
really.
all right.
Back then, weed was about the only thing you was gonna.
Right.
You know, there was
Yeah.
weed would come through and alcohol, and that would be about it. And I tell you what, this was how violent Greene County was when the new compound first opened. Like it had just opened up, they had a guy get killed in the zone. Another guy had hit him, and his head hit the bed, and he died. And so the captain, one of the captains that worked there, he come through to every building and would say, if you guys got to handle your business, I know how it goes, it's going to happen, do it on the yard. Don't do it. If you do it in the building, I'm locking everybody down and you're going to catch charges. But if you do it on the yard, we'll leave you alone.
That's crazy, man.
Right. And so every day,
I mean, it was controlled chaos.
Yeah.
every day when yard call would come, you could know if people were on that fence, the fence in the middle.
Yep.
If there's a group of them up there, they're talking, and somebody's finna get it. And yeah, it was just chaos, and you could feel it in the air. And I tell you what, I was there for 2 years, and jumped on a guy really for no reason. You know what I mean? Like he had done something somewhere else, and I just let's just get him. And
It was almost like an outlet for the anger.
right, it really was. And in the midst of it, he goes to the hospital and he stays gone about 2 weeks. And I didn't think it was that bad, you know what I mean? Like, but when he comes back, they move him to another zone, and he tells a guy he had a plate in his head, and the plate had shifted, and they had to move it back. And if he'd have got kicked one more time in the head, he'd have died.
Man.
And so word got back to me, and I sat on my bed, man, and I thought about it. I was like, man, I'm so mad about this 10 years that I'm finna make it a life sentence. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's reality. Like, the only reason I stopped kicking him was because another guy said, hey, man, the cops are coming, you know, the guards are coming. And I said, I signed up then. They come through. They just started opening the regional facilities. I didn't even know where Winston County was. I just put my name on there.
Yeah.
And started moving there, and I stayed in one regional long enough to get in some trouble, and then they moved me to another one.
Well, to be fair, any place would be better than Greene County.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Yeah.
even if you don't know where Winston County is, like, it's probably
Let's
better
go.
than Greene County.
Yeah, sign me up.
So I was just about to ask, how do you keep hope in a place like that? But I reckon that's is getting out and moving to another facility. I reckon that's the hope of trying to make it day to day.
Yeah, well, for me, my main perspective then, or my main objective then, was I was still dedicated to being the gang leader. You know what I mean? And so eventually that I achieved that big goal. And I went from place to place, and I eventually ended up back in Parchman, and I almost finished my sentence there. And I did 8.5 years. And went through a lot there. I went through that. I got married, got divorced, this from 21 to 30. And I got out with the determination that I'm not going back. I'm going to try life. I'm 30 years old, and I never really had a job, or never had a driver's license or a place of my own or anything. I never experienced.
So when you got out, did you go back to using and?
Within a month, I was locked back up, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I got out, and this is something that, like now, this was a lesson for me. Like I got out with the every intention of doing right, but I had no driver's license. You know what I mean? And the only job I could get paid like $7 an hour,
Yeah.
and I didn't have a ride to work.
So it was discouraging more so than anything.
Yeah, and I remember the day I got out, I got home real late at night. So the next morning, my mom takes me to Walmart, and she's done gotten older and married a man, and she slowed down a lot. She still drank, but they did it at home. And we go to Walmart Saturday morning, and I hit an aisle, and I'm trying to get some hygiene and stuff like that, and there was like 80 different kinds of toothpastes, and I was like,
I don't know what to do.
Mom, what kind should I get? And she's like, whatever kind you want. And I was just overwhelmed. There were people everywhere, and there was just too much stuff. And I said, let's do this another time. She's like, all right, come on. She kind of picked up on, you know what I mean? I was just
Overwhelmed.
Yeah, it was just.
It was starting to trigger something.
You know what that reminds me of?
What's that?
And I don't mean to make such a light situation of this, but it reminds me of Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
When the old dude gets out,
Absolutely.
and he sees the cars everywhere,
And doesn't know.
and he's like, "What's this?" And
Yeah.
it overwhelms him, and he goes and
Yeah, and then you got Morgan Freeman working in the grocery store,
Yeah.
and he's like asking, can I go to the bathroom? He's like, you are, you
Yeah.
don't have to ask to go to the, it's like
But you
that.
got to look at the picture that's painted, though. You've got somebody that's been,
Institutionalized.
It's not even just institutionalized. Like, he's dealt with from the back end when he was born into a family that they were dealing with addiction. His dad was already going to prison, right?
Yeah.
Correct?
Right.
And so then throughout his childhood, you've got juvenile. That was the solid, the consistent part. And then prison, more consistency. But then you're getting out to the world. I mean, even in prison, you'd made such a name for yourself. You'd become kind of grandiose, a big guy,
Right.
But then when you get out into the world, you feel like a seminal nobody.
Absolutely.
And so that in itself will just take you all the way down, because you're used to having whatever you need from anybody in a facility.
And I knew how to get it.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, go get such and such. I need some noodles, or whatever the case may
Yeah.
be.
Right.
For me, that's what, I was a noodle fanatic. But,
Obviously.
but we're not going to talk about my eating addiction. But so, and just because I know how it was for me whenever I got out, and it was so hard for me to do life because I was so used to having to shower at a certain time, having to use a bathroom at a certain time, having to eat early in the morning, or early in the afternoon, or you wasn't eating at all, or having to
yard
watch
time is at this time.
yeah, you know what I'm saying? You go outside at this time. Your store was on a sheet of paper. You didn't go to a mall. You didn't go to Walmart or anything else like that. Everything that you needed was a number and then the item. And so you get out into the world and you're having to say, all right, I got to shop for shampoo. I've got to buy soap. All I know is this brand.
Yeah.
What is all this stuff? So, the overwhelming there would
Danny, let me ask you a quick question. So when you were in the grocery store and all this was happening and all that overwhelming came over you, did anger come along with that too? Fear?
To be honest, it was fear. And so let me backtrack.
So anxiety, it turned into like an anxiety
Right.
situation, almost a freak out.
I was just curious.
Like a fish out of water. But let me backtrack. So when I was at Winston County, there was me and the chaplain there kind of butted heads, right? And I wrote him up, you know what I mean? I was trying to get some kind of religious stuff in it wasn't Christian stuff, and he didn't want to give it to me. So, but it was his job to do it. So I had to write him up to make him do it. And so we bumped heads, but he would come see me and talk to me. At least twice a week he'd come down there to where I was, knowing what I was doing and the stuff I was involved in, and just check on me. This guy named Raymond Price, I think was his name. And we would talk from time to time. And then, so he gave me I was up there talking to him, and I found this book called A Case for Christ. And I read it, and there was so much information in it that I'd never heard before. Like I've sit through 10,000 chaplain services, where they're talking about, receiving Jesus Christ and being saved and you can go to heaven. And I really just, to me, it was like, whatever.
Wasn't no context to it.
I prayed and he never, and I got 10 years. So, God wasn't listening to me. And so I really didn't have much context, and for me, it was like, what makes Jesus any better than Buddha or these Hindu gods?
Yeah.
It's all based on who raised you and what they taught you. And then I read this book, and there's so much stuff in it that I never heard of, like the 12 apostles were all killed. And, 11 of them were killed, and all they had to do was deny Jesus. And yet they refused. They had to have been, maybe one person would do that, but 11 of them, plus all the other Christians, and just on and on and on, all this different stuff. And so I went and I asked Raymond Price about it, man. I was like, man, why is nobody telling us this? Like, they just come in assuming we believe in Jesus. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just tell us about Jesus, and it's good. I'm not down in it, but nobody ever give me any facts, give me a reason to believe him. You know what I mean? Like, because in my heart, man, and I held this for a long time, is I was born into a toilet, and God's mad at me for being what I was taught to be. Like, how can you hold that against me? This is the only thing I know. If you wanted me to be somebody different, why didn't you give me a different family? You know what I mean? And so it just didn't make sense to me.
Literally born in sin. Yeah.
Right. And so, but when I read that, it just kind of opened my eyes up to, to that. And so, but that was as far as it went. The only thing that really changed, I'll be honest with you, I did that, and then I did a discipleship course just because that was the only way I could earn any gain time. I couldn't get it any other way. And the only thing that changed for me is I knew that when I died, I was going to go to hell. That was it. And so up until that point, I was not afraid of death or nothing like that. And then all of a sudden, the thought would come like, Danny, you're going to probably go to hell, and
That's crazy that you believed more in that than you did Jesus at that point.
Right, at any other.
That's mind blowing.
Yeah.
It just is because I guess I've kind of been in that same boat.
So what brought these questions about to you to Raymond was the fear of going to hell? Is that?
Well, it was just the fact that and as far as I was concerned, I couldn't be anybody different.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to be anybody different.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I didn't have any example of how to be someone different. We've all went to jail and said, well, I'm not going to do that anymore. And then you do it.
Yeah. Return to your own vomit.
Right. I've done it so many times that in my mind, it's, why lie? I still want to do it. I'm going to do it. You know what I mean?
But you didn't know a different way, though.
Exactly.
Nobody ever showed you anything else.
Right. That it was even possible. And so anyway, I get out, I did the 8.5 years, and I got out, and I was so uncomfortable, man. And I went and got me a little job, and I'd have to scrounge up a way to get to work and things like that. And I have a sister that has worked her whole life. She did not follow the path of me and my brother. You know what I mean? But she's always had my back. Like, no matter what, she's had my back. And you better not say nothing bad about me. She's gonna act a fool. You know what I mean? Now she'll get on me, but nobody else better not. And but she had life going on, and so she's like, you can stay here and I'll help you and this and that. And I was just, trying to make it happen, but I was so uncomfortable, and I had no.
So
go ahead.
So did the divine intervention, and this is just a question that's going to keep running in my head unless I ask it. So did that happen, like the Raymond Price, the interaction with him, did this happen after the guy?
What?
The guy that you jumped on? So
planning, and after that, I was nighttime, buddies that I've been in prison with and I've known before, found out I was out. I got with me. And I felt around. There's only people, old convicts and outlaws, and within a month I was arrested again. And the charge that they arrested me for was really bogus. You know what I mean? Like, they found some drugs in a girl's purse. She was driving her vehicle. They took me to jail and let her go.
Oh, man.
I was mad about it, but now I know it was a blessing.
See, that's going back to the episode we recorded earlier. It's it's like God will create circumstances to sit you down.
Absolutely.
To draw you closer to Him.
Because the people I was running with, it wasn't long before they got busted, and I would have got 100 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the charge in itself went away. They never did anything about it, but it violated my parole.
Yeah. Mm.
And so I went and did, this is what's great, I went and finished my sentence. I did like another 1.5 years to finish the 10. Got out and was out 3 weeks and got arrested again. And this time just running wild. See, I had this, all right, so the first time I got out, I was determined I was going to do the right thing, and I went to jail for somebody else's drugs. So this next time I got out, I had This is who I am. I'm going to party till I go back to jail. Why even, go through that heartbreak again? And within 3 weeks, I was right back up. And did another 2 years, I think.
So what is the limit for the habitual offender?
Oh, yeah.
4 times, isn't it?
Just 3. Your third,
three.
Your third
Yeah.
felony. Yeah, I was habitual
What's like
all those times. Right?
three majors?
Well, just your third felony is a small habitual. If any one of those is violent, you can have what they call the big bitch.
Yeah.
It's mandatory.
Beep.
Yeah. And
Habitual is what he meant, but there,
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen. But that's what it's called. Like generally, that's what it's
that's
called.
true.
And so with the small one, if there's not any violent, they can make your sentence mandatory.
Right.
And if there's a violent, like if you had a violent crime 20 years ago, they can still give you a life sentence on it.
Pull it back up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so I went back and did another 2 years on a gun charge, and got out. I decided to move to the coast, get away from Jackson, and try to start over. You know what I mean? And the truth of the matter is, something I've realized is drugs is just a symptom, right? Addiction is just a symptom. Whether it's we all have this, whether it's addiction to drugs or sex or depression or
Anger.
or gambling or whatever it is, all that is a symptom of a heart issue. And so I took my heart issue with me to the coast. And the only thing that changed was I had to drive all the way back to Jackson to get drugs because I didn't know anybody on the coast.
Yeah.
And
The insanity of the addiction.
It
right?
is,
The
right?
insanity of the addiction.
Right.
My goodness.
The girl I was with, her dad owned a automotive shop, so I was working, you know what I mean? But then Friday I'd go to Jackson and come back, and that went on for a while, and she got pregnant. And the one thing that I always swore I'd never do was have a child. I'd raise a child the same way I grew up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And the sad thing about it, the pathetic thing is, instead of stop doing drugs, I just left.
You were literally trying not to pass on the generational curse.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But instead of just saying, okay, I'm going to quit doing drugs and raise this kid, I just left because in my mind, I couldn't stop doing drugs.
And it's a
Right.
very common thing,
And
Well, a lot of people call it abandonment, but it's not. And you're
In your eyes, it's protection.
in your eyes, you're like protecting. You're trying to keep them from
Yeah.
seeing that lifestyle that you had to, that bled into your lifestyle.
Yeah.
But
how else would you have solved that problem?
Right.
That's all he knew. So
Right.
so instead
once
he
again,
just
we
distanced
still
himself.
haven't had the example.
Not saying it's
of how to
okay
do
or
it the
anything,
correct
but
way.
it's like he had to distance himself to protect his child.
Right.
I get it.
right. And so this is where God steps in again. I come back to Jackson, and I get pulled over one day, like the day after Easter, and a charge this is in 2008 when this happened.
Fourth time, that's
2009. This happened in 2009. A charge from 1996 from Florida, from Panama City, Florida, come up on me. So I got extradited to Florida, and I had to do 4 years over there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is there something about Jackson when you drive through here that you're going to end up in a recovery? Like if you're in addiction, because this is like the 4th guest that we've had that driving through Jackson, they've gotten pulled over somewhere
And it saved her life.
and it saved their life.
Right. And what it did for me was, I don't know what it did really. I mean, I know that I'd have caught another charge in Jackson. You know what I mean? There's no telling. I could have OD'd or whatever. I was just, living on the streets.
Well, so it sounds like it broke the routine.
It did. It sent me over there, and while I was in Florida, so in Florida Department of Corrections, you're going to work, period. It don't matter who you are, where you're at, they're going to make you work. And for the first time, I was able to work outside of the gates. You know what I mean?
Wow.
In Mississippi, they kept me locked down. I was security threat group, gang member, you know what I mean, stayed in trouble. When I get over there, and I didn't know anybody really.
See, again, this God just creating circumstances to draw you nearer to Him. So, I mean,
It really did. Like, I learned how to work.
yeah.
This might sound crazy as all get out. He was using what was familiar to you to get
To
you
change.
to get you what's the word that I'm looking for?
Reinstitutionalized. Maybe.
Well,
I don't know.
no, not reinstitutionalized, but like almost like
John's
reinstated
making up
with the
words.
world
Yeah.
a little
Right.
bit.
Put that on a
because
t-shirt.
I mean, if you've gone from institution to facility, and you've been institutionalized, and you've never had to be outside the gate, all of a sudden now you're arrested in Florida. You're working
got
with
the word.
something that's familiar, but
Learning.
unfamiliar.
He was acclimating him.
That's the word I was looking
He was
for.
acclimating him.
Yes, that's
what-
it.
There we go.
Y'all,
look at
y'all
this-
two over there operating on your own
Yeah.
frequency.
Look at this old drug addict. Over. I knew God would give me the word. That wasn't me. That was Holy Spirit.
Oh man.
Like, I don't even think I pronounced that right. And I sure can't define it. I mean, I went to Jackson Public Schools, man. Come on.
So you've done got over into Florida.
Yeah.
So are things starting to take a turn? Or
No,
are things
Not really. I mean, I'm working. Like, I worked on a farm, you know, and actually I started, I don't know, seeing that the leadership thing that I'd had in prison in Mississippi, you know what I mean, that it kind of goes with me, right? Like, I'd get on a work crew, and within a month or two, I was, you know, the leader of the inmates or whatever. And but I was learning how to work. I was learning that there is, you know, that there's joy in it.
Yeah.
Right, and getting up and doing something and making something and learning how to drive a tractor and that I was capable.
Some men have that air about them. You notice that, like that, just that leadership quality. Of course,
yeah.
you know, it's like just like when you lay eyes on them for the first time, they kind of command that kind of respect. You know what I mean? Danny's
But it's
certainly
just,
that.
it's crazy that's the fixture that out of the ruins that God kept
Yeah.
was that leadership quality.
Right.
Because you're ministry leader,
Right.
you know. So I mean, it's that never went away,
well, there's just some people
Mm.
that can just walk in a room
and you know,
and
yeah.
people
Or drunk. Yeah.
gravitate to them, and it's just like we had a leader in our group when I first came into, and that was him. He could walk into the room, and I mean, he was as humble as you could be, down to earth, but people were just instantly drawn to him, and he was just a natural born leader. Didn't even have to try it.
Yeah.
And so you just have people like that.
It's amazing that, you know, God can take somebody like Danny, like out of that pit and that darkness, that, you know, literally that was
The chaos.
you know, a general of like a commander of chaos, so to speak, and then pluck him out of that and use it for his good and his army. You know what I'm saying?
Commander Chaos.
Commander Chaos. That'd be a good name. Yeah.
That should have been the
You
the
know,
title.
Lieutenant Chaos. I mean, what I was getting at was like a lieutenant in, you know, the devil's army, as you know, and causing all that destruction and all that chaos and spreading all that fear and all that anger, and then God literally pluck him out of that and then flip it and, you know, and use the enemy's weapon against
So
it.
the one
You know
thing
what I'm
I've
saying?
noticed about the enemy, the devil, Satan, whatever name you want to give him, is that he'll take something that's good and make it perverted
Right.
to evil.
Yeah.
So even with your situation, he knew what you were going to be. I mean, God knew what you were going to be. So Satan was just using every little instance that he could just to say, let's just keep this perverted as long as we can. Let's just keep it, you know, as nasty as we can for as long as we can. But God was just saying, nope, you think you got him. Give me a second.
Yeah.
Right.
Because right now, all this stuff that you're doing, I'm going to use it somewhere.
Yeah.
You
We
know
were
what I
just
mean?
talking about this.
Literally, that's why it was so easy just to
Yeah.
You know,
rebuilding the ruins, man.
so
But
Look at God.
we're probably in chapter 16 by now, I think.
I think we're beyond that, John.
So what was that you said? God be doing stuff.
God be doing stuff.
He be
man.
doing stuff.
God be doing stuff.
Right. He's definitely at work. And so I get out, same stuff, you know what I mean, run back to the streets. I tried to do right for a little while. Went back to the coast with my daughter. And well, the girl that was pregnant, she had a little girl. And the little girl's first words were Dada. You know what I mean? And
Oh,
like, man, that was my, but then the streets call. And I get caught back up in all of that. And I end up losing custody of her. And I just went through, at that point on, I didn't really care at all. You know what I mean? It was just drugs, methamphetamines, hardcore, in the motel rooms, using, abusing, just whatever for, I don't know, a few years. I mean, every now and then I had to do a year in Rankin County on a little misdemeanor or whatever it was, and back on the streets, running wild. And I'd made a commitment, I'm not going to sell drugs and I'm not going to steal anything. and so I relied on my reputation. That's what people gave me, drugs and a place to stay, and that's how I lived.
I'm looking at Josh like I have something to say, but I don't want to interrupt this. But it's like it's part of that whole craziness of your addiction, how your mind works. It's like, okay, I'm still going to use, but I'm not going to steal anything, and I'm not going to
be okay.
I'm not going.
You're right.
I'm going to do it my way, but this time I'm going to do it this way.
It's
I'm
the
going
justification.
I'm not going to sell drugs, and I'm not going to steal anything, but I'm not going to hurt anybody, but I'm still going to use.
Right.
You know,
I'm just not going to go back to prison. I'm going to stay out and do drugs.
This is how we do it. We're going to get it right.
I'm going
this
to
time.
use drugs successfully.
Yeah,
That was
gonna
the
get it.
key
We're gonna get it
phrase
right
I
this
always
time.
thought about in my story.
You know, and I've said this from time to time with mine personally, how I could stay in my porn and sex addiction for as long as I did was I had to keep justifying it. I had to make myself out to be the good guy.
Right.
Like I couldn't if I once saw that I was the bad guy, I wouldn't be able to continue in it.
Well, at least I'm not physically cheating on my wife.
Well, I made my wife out to be the bad guy.
Oh,
Yeah.
I made her out to be the bad guy, so I felt better about myself and what I was doing.
It was a victimization.
Yeah.
Like
And
of self.
that was the only way that I could continue on with that is by being in that mindset, and that's what we do. That's that addict mindset of
Yep.
we've got to justify.
and rationalize it.
Yes,
Yeah.
because if we can't, we're not going to continue in it.
Right.
Right.
I mean, because it's not
for me,
logical.
it was
at
like
that
I didn't
point.
have a choice.
Yeah,
This is who I am.
Yeah.
This is what I know. This is what I do, and people won't accept me for that. You know what I mean? And it was her grandparents, my daughter's grandparents' fault. You know, but the truth was I didn't want their granddaughter around a drug addict, and I can't blame them for that, none whatsoever. And so I ran from that, but I used that as an excuse not to care, not to even try.
Real quick, you mentioned your aunt earlier. Is in this point in your life, is she still?
No, she passed away.
Okay, I was just curious because I remember you had said that early on. She had said you are not going to get away with anything.
Yeah.
And obviously, here she was.
She
she
stuck-
called
straight
that
up.
one.
Yeah, she really did.
That sounds like every move you made.
I got locked up for her.
Yeah.
Danny, you
And-
took a pencil. 5 years. I mean,
But still, it's amazing to me. It's like this is if you listen to the story and going back, it's like from the time that seed was planted,
yeah.
it's like God was already doing stuff.
Yep.
It really
God
was.
be doing
God
stuff.
be doing stuff.
It
Yeah.
really was.
Yeah.
And so after being out and living on the streets and all the chaos, like total chaos, I got arrested in Pearl for possession of a stolen firearm. And the girl I was with at that time was pregnant. And so I sit in Rankin County Jail. I go to Rankin County Jail, and I know, they got me. They found the gun. I told them it was my gun because, I was in somebody else's vehicle. And I'm knowing I'm probably going to do about 10 years. Convicted felon with a firearm, and it was a stolen firearm. And this girl's pregnant. And I knew in my heart it was going to be a boy, right? And so I'm sitting in a cell, and just so happened to be in a cell by myself, man. And the reality of it hit me. Like, I'm finna give this kid exactly what was given to me. His dad's in prison and his mom's on drugs. So he's finna grow up exactly like I did, and it's my fault. You know what I mean? Like, that really hit me hard. And I really didn't know how am I going to live with myself with this. It was eating me up. And so I was one night that they have a church call, and this guy comes in, and I was mad about it. I was watching TV. And so I'm headed back to my cell, and the guy, he says something. He was just talking. They hadn't even started it yet, and he says something to one of the inmates, and I'd never heard it before. And I thought I'd pretty much heard everything these chaplains and stuff had to say. But he said, we're designed to worship and know God. That's how God made us. That's why he made us. And that when we don't do that, we have a hole inside of us, and we try to fill it up with other stuff like drugs and women or money or whatever it is. And he said nothing ever fills it. And I'd never really heard that before, and it just got me to thinking. So I go to my cell, get my Bible, and come back out, and I sit down, and I can't tell you even what he said the rest of that night. But that night, I'm sitting in my cell, and for the first time in my life, I was just really honest with God. Like I just prayed for my son. Like, God put somebody in his life that's going to take care of him. That he's not around the stuff that I grew up with. Give him, you know what I mean? And in the midst of that, I just asked God, like, why don't you love me? That was and I was crying. I was like, you know, they say you love everybody, but why not me? What did I do?
Whew.
And it was just an honest prayer. Like most prayers in jail are, get me out, let me get out. You know, I'll do better. But it was just, to me, it was like, man, I was born into this stuff. It's the only life I know, and I can't get out of it. I don't know how to get out of it. You know what I mean? And so why don't you love me? And from that point on, man, like I cried myself to sleep that night. You know what I mean? Like that was just being raw with God. Things started moving, right? Like the girl who was pregnant, she sold everything she owned and bonded me out of jail. And I had like a $50,000 bond. I had no hopes of getting out. And so she bonds me out, and she's pregnant, and she's using, and I'm like, we're going to do good. And we did good for a couple weeks at my sister's house, and then we got high. And then we sit down and we said, look, man, we got to go to rehab. You're pregnant. You can't be getting high, and you're not going to stay sober if I'm getting high. And I can't do it. We got to do something. I got charges on me. You got charges on you. We got this kid on the way. And so my sister used to be married to a guy named David Dillmore back when we were teenagers. And so me and David grew up together. He was the first, you know, we did a lot of crazy, crazy stuff together. And I know God had changed his life, like dramatically changed his life. And so him and my sister, they're not married anymore, but we're all family. We're still family. They're like, you know, brother and sister now. And so David comes over. He finds out I'm at my sister's. He's going to come over. Danny, can I talk to you? And he goes, you know. And we're sitting there having this conversation. We've had a few times. He's come at me a few times about Jesus. But he kept saying, he said, Danny, you know me. You know me. You know what I mean? And so that just resonated with me. Like, yeah, I've known you my whole life, man. And you were meaner than I was. He was. David was a mean guy. You know what I mean?
Man.
And he was just as lost as I was, and just as outlaw as I was. And the only reason he didn't go to prison is because he had a dad who would, you know, keep him out of prison. But God had changed him in such a way. And I just thought, I guess I'm gonna go to Mercy House. He was the director of Mercy House. And we ended up getting Tara, my son's mother, who's pregnant, right? None of the rehabs take her because she was pregnant, except this place in Vicksburg called Beautiful Deliverance. And so she goes there, and I go to Mercy House, man. And while I was at Mercy House, man, I was just, my thing was, like, I got there, and I'm like, God, I don't really know nothing about this. You know, these people are raising their hands and praising, and you know what I mean? And, you know, but I do know this. I know that you changed David Dillmore, like, drastically changed him. And if you can do that for him, then you can probably do something for me. You know what I mean? And like, so I just followed David's lead, like, you know, and would listen to what he had to say. And God just,
There's that example.
right. And God just, he revealed himself to me. Like, there's a couple of things that happened at Mercy House. Like here's one that okay, so Tara's pregnant, and they're letting us get visits. You know what I mean? They're going out of their way for us, really. These people are just good people, man, good Christian people. Like, they'll go pick her up and bring her from Vicksburg to Georgetown so we can see each other. Anyway, she tells me, like, that my son's going to have to be born in Jackson. Can't be born in Vicksburg because of he's going to have surgery as soon as he's born. He had something going on with him. She said, but don't worry, it's going to be okay. And I thought about it, man, and of course it gets to eating at me, and you know, I'm kind of freaking out about it. And she's like, ask David if you can come to the doctor visits with me, because we got to go to this high, whatever it is, this specialty doctor in Jackson. And so I asked David, and he's like, yeah, just let me know when it's going to happen. And so Sunday, we go to Southside Assemblies of God over in South Jackson, and there's this little lady there named Miss Jean. She's like 80 years old, like 4'6". You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But she's a powerhouse, and she's everybody's grandma. All the Mercy House guys, she's their grandma. She's gonna come and she's gonna hug your neck, talk to you, and she's gonna pull you out and help you praise God. And she's gonna, you know, she's just a good little lady. Anyway, she's talking to the guys, and then she walks off. She turns around, she looks at me, and she says, "You come here." So I go up to her, and she's like, "You know Jesus?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "I thought so." She said, "What's bothering you?" So I get to telling her. You know what I mean? And in the midst of that, I'm crying, you know, like my son, you know, blah, blah, this and that. She said, all right, well, we're going to pray about this. and we're going to pray in agreement. I said, yes, ma'am. So we prayed, and she prayed, and I don't know what she said. You know what I mean? When it was over with, I'm crying. And she looked at me, and she said, don't worry about it no more. She walked off. All right, so that Monday, I called Tara and tried to find out, about the doctor visits, and it's for the next Tuesday. So we have to make arrangements. We have to go pick her up because Beautiful Deliverance didn't have a ride for her. Pick her up. We go to the doctor in Jackson, and they do all the little sonograms and stuff. And then the doctor comes in, and he gets to looking. And he's like, I don't know what these people are talking about. He says, let me show you something. He shows. He's got the little arrow thing pointing. He says, see that? That's his brain. See that? That's his organs. See, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this baby. I don't know what these people thought they saw, but there's nothing there. We got sonogram pictures of before then, right, when they found out that he had some issues and he was going to have surgery. But that day there was none, right? And so, and I know that, like, God just used those moments, and there's a couple more that happened to where when it was all over with, there's no doubting in my mind. You cannot convince me that God is not real and that Jesus Christ is the Son of God.
He was showing he was right there with you the whole time.
Right, because, all the doubts and stuff went away as far as that. He convinced me, right, that he is real. And
man,
what was the question you asked? What would it look like if you knew that God was going to rebuild the ruins?
Yeah. How would you live today differently, knowing if God was going to 100%, without a doubt, rebuild the ruins?
And so I stayed there a year. I'd love to say, well, I still failed. You know what I mean? I failed, and I left. The feds picked my charge up. It went from a state charge in Rankin County to the FBI picked my charge up because it was a gun charge, and they indicted me armed career criminal, and which means, like, in the federal system, they got a point system, and what your charge carries, depends on what the charge is, and your background and all these different things. And they indicted me armed career criminals like their equivalent of habitual offender.
Right.
And so the least I could get was 15 and the most up to a life sentence. And that kind of freaked me out. You know what I mean? Like, they come pick me up, take me to Madison County Jail, and they serve me these papers and all this stuff. And my lawyer's telling me that, well, the best we can hope for is 15 years. And in the feds, 15 years looks like about 12 or 13. And so I'm like, God, I thought we were doing something.
Still doing 85% of the time.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I thought, you know what I mean? You done some really amazing things in my life, man. And now the least I'm going to get is 15. And, but the judge does something. He says, I'm going to do something I've never done in my career, and I'm going to release you back to Mercy House.
Man.
He's like we do this it's decided on 4 criteria, and that's the charge, how much evidence they got against you, which they've got you on video admitting to the charge, how much time you're facing up to a life sentence, your background, which you have got a extenuous criminal background, and whether or not you pose a threat. He said, and you failed 3 out of 4 of those. He said, but I'm still going to send you back to Mercy House.
But God.
Right.
Yep.
That right there.
Absolutely. And the feds are...
It's got to be from God, because that makes 0 sense.
Yeah.
That is 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard so many stories like that, too,
I mean,
man.
it's just the fact that, him being habitual offender,
Yeah, man.
violent offender.
I mean,
Right.
the
In
cards
some
that are stacked
aspects.
against him going into this is not looking good.
A gang leader at one point, and I mean, it's just all this stuff that's piled up, and the judge just goes, nope, you going back to rehab.
It's like I can literally see Satan himself standing there like, ha, got you for
God's
life.
saying,
And then God's like, no, I got this. And
this
then,
one's mine.
Yeah, this one's mine. I got this.
But I want to go back, because have you seen the progress from where he made that prayer?
Yes.
Why don't
man.
you love me?
Yeah.
And then
It's like, that's another thing. It's like I can literally, when he was telling that part of the story, I could literally see God looking down on him. It's like, that's what I've been waiting on.
Right.
That was the moment.
This is what I've been waiting on.
Right, like I got
I've
real
been waiting on you.
Yeah.
And so he started showing me, and I stayed in Mercy House a year, and I failed. I relapsed, and I left. I cut the ankle bracelet off, and I ran. And for 9 months.
Haven't you learned yet? You ain't going to get away with
I
nothing.
mean,
Nothing.
I mean, your aunt told you that.
And so I'm running from the feds right there, kicking doors open in Jackson, looking for me, and I'm hating myself. You know what I mean? Like I'd sit in the mirror, I'd stare in the mirror and just and cuss myself out. Like, I hate you. You're worthless, dude. You blew it. You blew it now. And I was staying with a friend out in Lena, Mississippi, out in the country. Nobody knew where I was really, and so I was staying out there, and this friend of mine, she comes and visits me, and she tells me, she's like, look, I got to go to church tonight. She said, I didn't go to church today, and she's real serious about her tithing. She said, so I've got to tithe. I've got the money. She said, I can go to any church. It don't matter what church. I just got to do this. I made a promise. I'm like, all right, we'll go. She said, no, you got to go with me. I said, I'm not going to church. I'm not doing it. She said, it's your fault I missed church, so you got to do it. You got to go with me. And I don't want to go. The shame and the guilt, they're just laying on top of me, right? And finally, I'm like, okay. So we go to this little bitty church right down the road, this little Baptist church, man. It's a Sunday night, and we pull up, and we go. The doors are locked. And then somebody tells us, well, they're over in the gym. They're in the next little building. It's the 5th Sunday, so they're doing the potluck thing. So we go over there, and I eat some of the best chili in my life, and everybody's like, all these older ladies are, hey, where y'all from? Yeah.
The food got him.
Yeah, and we're just talking to them, and it was, when we leave, and we go to the store, and she goes in the store, and I'm just sitting there, and I started crying. I was like, I remembered the prodigal son. Like, I had all this shame and this guilt, and I just didn't want to go back in there, man, because I was going to feel it all. And I show up, and all they had for me was a bowl of chili. That's what God had for me, right?
And a potluck at a church, it's almost like a party.
Right. It was.
Yeah, so,
I was expecting.
That's the equivalent of the robe and the ring and the fat,
Right.
Yep.
And so I just cried and cried, right? And then, so I'm sitting
That's
out
awesome,
there,
man.
and I started going to this little church. Like, I didn't have a ride or nothing. I'd hop on this little dirt bike and ride up to the church. It wasn't very far. And just sitting there, and that was the only time I found peace, right? Because any other time I'm hating myself, and I'm, the feds, I'll never see my child. And when they do catch me, they're going to give me a life sentence and blah, blah, this and that. And so I just go to church on Sundays at this little bitty church and sit there, and I'd have a little peace. And finally, somebody contacts me and tells me the feds know where you're at, that they're coming. You know what I mean? And so my friend's like, man, you want me to hide you out? You want me to put you on the bus? What do you want to do? And I was like, no. If they're coming, they're coming. It's time. You know what I mean? I'm not running anymore. If God's ready for me to go to jail, then I'm not going. I'm not doing it. I'm tired of running. And they kicked the door in Tuesday morning. And so I get back to Madison County Jail, and I'm thinking 20 years. The lease was 15. I ran from Mercy House after doing a year there. They're probably going to give me 20. And so, but I read my Bible every day. You know what I mean? And I started realizing, like, God, I'll serve you in prison.
Yeah.
Like, if you'll just give me some peace about this, I'll serve you in prison, man. I screwed up, but you haven't turned your back on me. I know you haven't. And so I'll just serve you in prison. And the things that I learned at Mercy House, I started doing in jail. Like getting up and doing my Bible study and doing my prayer journal and doing a prayer call for the guys and doing Bible studies for the guys. And just, that was it. I'm going to serve you in prison, God. Just please watch over my son. And so I was sitting there for 10 months. They kept postponing my court date to get sentenced because they had that sweep a few years back when they swept all the chicken plants and arrested all the illegal aliens.
Oh, yeah.
So that put me on hold for like 9 months. And then 5 days before court, my lawyer comes in and he says, sign this paper. And I look on it and I'm withdrawing my guilty plea. And I said, I can't withdraw I can't take this to trial. You know what I mean? I admitted to the charge. I said, what's this about? And he said, I'll explain to you. So I signed it. And he says, look, with that charge, the judge's hands were tied. He had to give you 15 years. So what they're going to do is they're not going to convict you of that charge. They're just going to convict you of possession of a stolen firearm. And you'll get around 2 years. And I wasn't sure if he said 10 or 2. 10 sounded great. You know what I mean? Like,
compared to the latter.
Yeah, what I was thinking was 20. If he 10, I'll be out in time to teach my son to shave. That became my prayer. Like, God, I just want to teach him how to shave.
Yeah.
And I said, did you say 2 or 10? He said 2. I just started crying. I was like, man, I don't know how you did that. He said, it wasn't me. It was the DA.
Oof.
She didn't want to throw you away. I'm like,
Oh, wow.
that don't happen, right? The DA's job is to throw you away. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I mean, I do know. I know it was God. But I had a public defender. They had me dead to the right. And they had every reason to throw me away. and they gave me 2 years.
And with the public defender, I mean, their main goal is to get you to plea out. Like
Right.
they're not there to fight your case. I mean, I'm
And,
not
and-
speaking for all. You got some that'll step
Right.
out, but most public defenders, they get paid a fee to get you to plea.
And at
Yeah.
and at
Like
this
that's the saying.
and at
the
this
fee to
point, you'd already served 10 months of that too.
Right. Sitting in, and so I got the 2 years, and I went to the feds in Yazoo and did like a year there. Most of it was locked down because of coronavirus. And but while I was there, like, so the feds are wide open. You know what I mean? When you go out to chow, there's drugs and just whatever you name it, they got it. And so I would, from the time I leave the building till I got back from going to chow, I would just keep reminding myself, like you're not a drug addict, Danny. You're a child of God. You're a man of God.
Amen.
You're renewed. And things of that. I just, and I'd go to every church service they had, and I just stayed focused on that, right? And that's
That's
the
right.
first time I'd ever done time where I wasn't getting high and wasn't fighting. It wasn't off in the middle of a bunch of stuff. And
You're actually doing the time and not numbing it.
Man,
Right.
this just
Yeah.
proves that God be doing stuff just
Be
all
doing
the time.
stuff.
God be
man.
doing stuff.
I think we're gonna change our motto
No, you're not.
from breaking the shame and stigma of addiction and recovery to God be doing stuff.
No, you
I'd
ain't.
be doing stuff.
No, you ain't doing that.
And it's been a process, you know,
Yeah.
like, so they tell you, it's a process. And I can remember messing up at Mercy House, and I went to my counselor one day about it, and I was just crying. I was like, look, I came in there, I want you to know that I'm not faking it. I'm really trying, man. And so I did. I screwed up. But I'm not screwing up all the time, and I just got caught. I mean, I'm really trying. He said, Danny, we know you're trying. Do you really think after 30 years of hardcore addiction that you're just going to do it
Yeah.
like that? We know. It's a process, bro. Just keep trying.
One day at a time.
Right.
The magic button. I think we all look for the instant magic button.
Yeah, like,
Instant,
like that's what we
Yeah.
expect to say a prayer, and then I'm going to wake up tomorrow, and I'm not going to want to get high or anything. And it just didn't work out like that.
Yeah.
And so it's been a process. Like, I got out, got married, was going to church and all this different stuff, and so I jumped ahead of God. I should have never gotten married, and to the woman that I married, we weren't ready. You know what I mean? Neither one of us. And but I was just chasing, like, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do this, and it all fell apart.
Danny be doing stuff.
Yeah.
What did I say though? I said anytime that we get a blessing and we start sticking our hands into it and not relying on faith and God's work and
Absolutely.
trusting the process, it's gonna fail.
Yep.
Like if you hang a chandelier from a ceiling without the instructions, that
gonna
thing's gonna hit the ground
Absolutely.
and shatter.
And it's probably gonna land on my head.
Yeah, that's right.
and so that all fell apart, and I didn't know how to deal with it, and I ran back to the streets. Right? Well, I didn't run. I ran back to the drugs, but I was still working and trying to maintain it. And I'd try to get off of them, and I'd fail, and I'd get back, and I'd fail, and I'd get back. It was a roller coaster ride, man. And I was sitting in Mendenhall, and I prayed one night, like I prayed to God. I said, God, I'm trying. I can't seem to get out of this hole, man. And I'm, I'm trying. Like, help me. And so 2 days later, I woke up in jail. And I woke up knowing that this was God. Like, it was that my view of it had changed. Like, he helped me. And so I was in jail once again for somebody else's drugs that they told them they were their drugs. And so I sit in jail for 20 months. And in that 20 months, my prayer was, God, whatever you want in my life, put in my life. And whatever you don't want, take out. And I lost everything. He took everything. Like, I got out of jail with a pair of jogging pants. I lost my wife, my truck, my tools, my clothes, everything. But in the process of that, like, those 20 months were probably the best 20 months of my life. Like, as far as my walk with God, because it was just me and him. Right? Like, I was teaching doing Bible classes and teaching stuff in the jail. And I got a job in the kitchen. And so God just took care of me. And I was studying and reading and just really drawing closer to God and learning what it really means to know God. Like, not just to know who God is, but to know him. Like, he did that time with me completely and totally. And so I got out with absolutely nothing, and I went to Vicksburg. And the reason right before I got out, I was like, God, I don't know where you want me to go. I'm no longer making decisions. Like, I'm done thinking Danny has it all figured out. I just know that I need you to tell me where to go and what to do from here on out. And so I got on the phone with my son's mom, and, she let me call, and she's, Danny, come tell your dad. His name's Danny as well. Come tell your dad you love him. and he didn't want to. He was doing something else, and she, come tell your daddy you love him. And he gets on the phone, and he says, when you coming home? And it broke me, right? Like I could hear it in his voice, like he's tired of telling his daddy he loves him. Like, I'm done with that, man. When you going to be my daddy? And so I went up to my cell, and I said, God, I'm going to Vicksburg unless you got other plans. Like, if you don't want me to go to Vicksburg, you're going to have to make me not go there because my son needs me. And so I go to court on my violation, you know what I mean, for the federal probation. And my PO's trying to throw me back in prison, and the judge just shuts him off. That's not going to happen. And he asked me, he says, Mr. Ivy, he says, you seem like a good guy. Like, you're a hard worker, and you don't seem like a bad guy, but you got this addiction that keeps getting you locked up. So what are you going to do about it? And I said, Your Honor, I've come to realize, man, that I can get out with all the intentions of doing right and be determined to do right. But life happens, right? And I have no idea how to handle it. Like, I don't know how to deal with life. And I know that I can get out today with every intention, but it's going to happen. Life's going to happen. It's going to throw me a curveball, and I don't know how to deal with it. So I want to go somewhere where somebody can teach me how to deal with this thing called life. And he says, all right, well, do you have anywhere? And I said, well, this beautiful deliverance in Vicksburg, this lady, Lisa Capp, that's what she dedicates her life to, is helping people like me. And they've got a bed open for me. He says, all right, well, then we're going to put it on there that that's where you're going. Good luck. And so I went out there, and I get there, and so the Danny has learned to submit.
Amen.
Right, like that was what God told me when I was in jail. It's like I was asking God, why do I keep failing? Like, I want to, I want to, it's in my heart, but I keep failing, and God just told me submit. Right, like Danny, you don't have a clue, so why I think you do. And so I went there and I told Miss Lisa Capp, I'm like, Miss Lisa, I'm submitted. You tell me what you want me to do, I'm going to do it. Period. You know what I mean? And, man, she told me to sit down for 30 days. Fresh out. Nobody wants to sit down. But I did. I sit down and just stayed studying my Bible and spending as much time. My son lives right down the road, and I'm his hero all of a sudden.
Man.
And
what's the word I always say? If nothing changes,
Nothing
changes.
right.
So that one instance of you finally not getting out and then running out straight to the streets or
Right.
going to find a homeboy,
Or a woman.
yeah. I
That-
mean,
you know
to
what I'm
literally
saying?
sit still, because that's what God wants us to do.
Yeah.
As much as we stay so busy in life and we feel like we have to run the rat race continuously, is He just wants us to sit still and be at peace with Him. Like your aha moment was, you were sitting still.
Just be still.
You were sitting still.
Right, and
Like,
just trusting God. Like, okay, for me, the big, always in my mind was the big issue was drugs. Like, if I could just learn to hate drugs and not love them. Like, I hate the consequences of them, but I got to hate them.
Yeah.
And if I could just start hating them, everything would be okay.
Truth be told, you probably hated them the whole time.
yeah.
Right. Well, now I hate them, right?
Yeah.
Like, I hate them, man. And not only in my life, but like I've lost somebody here recently that was super close to me.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just I got a different view of them. But that's not the only, right, I got that out the way. But there's other issues too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The other issues will bring you right back.
Yeah.
Most definitely.
Like I feel like I got to have a girlfriend. I got to have a woman. I got to have somebody validate me and make me feel special. And all that does is cause problems. Like I'm trying to, you know what I mean? And so God has been showing me here recently that it's a heart problem, Danny, that don't label it as just drug addiction. Because you can get the drugs out of the way and still have problems and issues that we don't even, I don't think I got to face them. It's okay to have this and have that in my life as long as I don't have drugs. And that's a lie.
Right.
It really is. Because God, the devil don't quit. He's not like, well, he quit doing drugs, I'll leave him alone now. No, he's going to send this woman your way, or he's going to send whatever it takes.
And actually, he comes at you a little bit harder when you're walking with Christ. You know, it's like,
Absolutely does.
it's not all
It's
rainbows and sunshine.
the distractions that
Yeah.
He creates.
Absolutely.
That's what gets you, is because you don't even realize how subtle it happens. Like, you'll be sitting there fine, you got your Bible, you're reading, and all of a sudden you got to time more to work.
Yeah.
Or your kids are getting busy,
Right.
or you got soccer, baseball, just everything starts to,
Just
pop
pulling
up.
at you.
Yeah, Facebook, whatever the case may be, all this stuff starts hitting at you.
How long have you been out this last time?
About 7 months.
7
man.
months, man.
Yeah.
And so I'm working on my 3 years of sobriety.
Amen.
Awesome.
And
What date is that?
December 14th.
Okay. Awesome.
Amen.
Awesome.
And
Awesome.
We're
so
going to party.
since I've been at Beautiful Deliverance, right, we're finna
Sober-
open up a sober living house.
Sober party.
I'm sorry, Danny.
This coming week, all the guys will be moving into a sober living house. So I'll be leading that. And Miss Lisa's got me preaching once a month. Like, who'd have thunk it?
I'm
Right?
telling
that
you,
blows
man.
my mind. Like,
Your aunt.
Your
my
aunt?
aunt?
Yeah,
Exactly
your
right.
aunt.
Yeah, you're at.
She told
That's
you from the
exactly
get go.
right. And doing this CR thing, and so the CR started. It was really my buddy. Was like I said, we were doing the book drive, just trying to get some books up. And then,
Casey.
yeah, and then Alex was like, "Hey, why don't y'all just take over the CR?" And then Foundry jumped in and said, "Well, we want to do that. We want to be a part of it." And I'm in the background going, "Casey, don't drag me into this." and next thing you know, it's like I'm the leader, right? Like, how did this happen, Casey?
Natural born leader.
So God done put you back in leadership.
Yeah.
But I'm
the
loving
right
it though.
way.
God
I
be
do.
doing stuff.
I really do. I love it, man. It's
It's like God said, "Oh, we got a leader right here."
Yeah.
Oh, the devil put some dirt on it. Let me
yeah.
get that off of there real quick.
And it's just amazing, especially like I said at the beginning of the show, man. Like I grew up in South Jackson myself. Danny's a little bit older than me, but I grew up with his brother. And I wasn't around Danny all that much at all, really. But I heard the Danny stories. You know what I'm saying? And we didn't formally meet until literally just a couple months ago or something like that. He was literally next door to my partner's house in Florence with Casey and David Delmore working. And man, I'm telling you, when I officially met him for the first time, he had that light on him, that you see, when you know somebody's just anointed, that when somebody is just powerful in the spirit, man. And bro, I gotta say, look, God, especially, not just you, Casey, Benny, me, man, it's amazing. And Josh and Drew, it's just amazing what God can do, man.
Yeah.
It's just, I never get tired of hearing these stories. It just blows my mind. It's hard to wrap my mind around it sometimes.
I know.
It's just beautiful.
All right. And so like, all right, I've told my story as far as my life, you know what I mean? But I remember going when I first hit Mercy House, and I'd been there maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So I get in, David Dillmore pulls up, and I get in a truck with him. You know what I mean? And I was like, Dave, man, I want to tell you something, man. Bro, I'm so proud of you. I just want you to know how proud I am. Like, I remember the old guy. I knew that guy. And what you're doing now, the man you've become, and it amazes me, and I'm proud of you. And he kept saying, Danny, it's not me, it's Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
But Dave, I know that. I know it's Jesus. But, man, the man you've become, he said, Danny, it's not me, it's Jesus. Any good thing you see in me is Jesus Christ, right? And so now, God's doing amazing things in my life. Like, and for me, just somebody would even call me up and say, man, I got a problem. Can you help me? That blows my mind. You know what I mean? Like, people, call me and ask me to help them get to a rehab or can you, and it's like, man, God.
Send me.
Yeah. And here lately, he's been really pouring into my heart. Like the beginning of my Christian walk has been me. God fix this problem. God fix that problem. God fix me. God help me. And through all that, God has done all those things, and he reached that point where, Danny, can you just trust me now? Like, you don't have to keep, let's focus on some other people.
Right.
Like I've proven to you that I got you. But what about other people? And so now I'm getting into that, and it's like, there's where that joy is.
Yes.
Right? There's really where the joy is. Like, it's great that I got a truck and a job, and I got my son in my life, and it's great that I got, a little money in the bank, and I've never had those things, and those are wonderful things, and God has given me all those things, but there's no feeling, man, like just like praying with a guy.
I know.
Like week 4 last, we're praying with this dude, and he's just crying. He's a young cat, and he's fighting for his life like he really is. He showed up when I told him. I said, bro, if you're serious about getting off drugs, just show up. And he showed up, and Miss Lisa's got him going to a 90-day program, which most guys, I only want 30 days. He's like, I'll do whatever. I'll go wherever. I want a different life. And he's like, man, and I need you to help me, Danny. And I'm like, okay. And so, bam, he left. But before he left, we got to pray over him, right? And so Miss Lisa's doing the prayer, and I got my hand on him, and I could hear God saying in my heart that this is one of mine, Danny. I was like, God, I'm being a part of that, right? That's it. I'm just being a part of it. It's all him, but like, God, you would let me be a part of this?
Man, if you can't see Jesus on this dude, then you are blind,
Right.
man.
Right.
Yeah. When you said that, made me think about 3 years ago, I went and I shared my testimony over in Morton with Aubrey's group
Right.
at Church of the
Church
King.
of the King.
And I shared my story there. Well, no, I take that back. I just lied. It was not Church of the King. It was over at Dayspring in Clinton.
Okay.
But Aubrey was there.
Yeah, Dave Sheffield.
Aubrey had brought in a group over there. And anyway, I shared my story there.
All right, Dave.
And Aubrey approached me afterwards, and he had a guy with him, Chris. He's like, Chris is struggling. Would you mind praying with him? And I was like, absolutely. And I prayed with Chris, and I saw Chris back at Recovery Fest. And he was kind of updating me on some things that was going on through his life since that moment.
Yeah.
I was like, man, God, I got to be just
Part
a
of
that.
small
Part of
part of that.
Absolutely. Like, that's it.
And it's man, like, it does something
It
to
shifts.
you.
It does.
Yeah,
Yes.
it shifts
Yes.
your whole perspective on what this is really about. Like, it's just yeah. And that's what God's just been pouring to me here lately. Like, today's my birthday. You know what
Well,
I
happy
mean?
birthday.
Today's my
Happy birthday, man.
This is a present from God, like getting to come here and just, you know what I
Man.
mean? Like,
How about that?
absolutely, man. And so,
34 years old.
absolutely, man.
Danny, look, listen, man, I can't tell you what an honor it has been just
Most
sitting
definitely.
next to you, man, and hearing all this. And not only that, but being a part of this birthday
Yeah.
with you, man.
Well, let me
There's
say
so
this.
many
Like,
preaching moments in his story that is, I mean, it is amazing. Like, I know we normally do what's the big takeaway
Yeah.
about this point.
Can't do it
but
with this one.
No, because I mean, we would literally start another show
Yeah.
on the big takeaways. Because I mean, there's just so much,
Yep.
so much.
What were you about to say, Danny?
I was just gonna say on the way here, you know, I'm praying about it, right? And the thought occurred to me, y'all, and I want to honor y'all, right? Like church, we got churches and we got CR groups, and you know what I mean. We got A meetings and NA meetings and things like that. But there's more, right? And you guys are creating a platform. You guys aren't like, I know this is big in other places, but I didn't even know they had podcasts going on in Mississippi. Much less Christian podcasts and recovery podcasts.
Right.
And so I man, it's awesome. Like, it really is, man. My hat's off to you guys.
We're
appreciate that.
we're honored to have you be a
Appreciate that.
part of it, man. Like, for
Yeah,
sure.
man. I can tell you, man. This here is one of the more powerful stories that I've heard in a very long time.
Probably since episode 42.
Here we go.
That was my episode, if you don't know.
Maybe that.
I'm over here just like, hey, here we go.
I'm just kidding, Josh. I'm sorry.
Okay, so we got a minute.
Yep.
Man,
I got to know, how did you go from a prison guard to a podcast guy?
That's for
long
next
story.
episode.
That's a long.
Actually, we're
story.
about to do that episode
Yeah,
for
we
Black
are.
Sheep Recovery.
But that's a whole nother episode. But basically, so I'm from Wayne County.
Yeah.
I grew up in Wayne County. Man, and down in Wayne County, it's really your options are oil field,
Yeah.
be a teacher, or where I lived in the southern part of Wayne County, which right on the Greene County line. A lot of people went and worked at the prison. Well, I just came out of the oil field, couldn't find a job. My uncle had worked down at the prison. Had been down there since the 90s. He's like, come on down here. Well, they'll hire anybody. They'll hire all. If you got blood running through your veins, they're gonna hire you. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
I was like, all right, I'll try it. And I got down there and worked down there for about 5 years, and about from 2007 to 2012. So that's a little anyway. So I got married, and my wife is from Meridian. And when I got married, I moved up there with her because there wasn't nothing in Wayne County.
Right.
I mean, there's nothing.
You're right. It really isn't.
So I was like, I'll move there with you. So I get up there to Meridian. And I tried working at the county jail up there, and it's. So I went to the coal plant, the Kemper coal plant. They started opening it up, and I tried that, and I didn't like it. And all through that time, my porn addiction is just going through the roof. It's just blowing up. And when I get at the coal plant, I leave it to take another job. And when I do, I'd already found Celebrate Recovery during that time, but when I took that new job, I stopped going to Celebrate Recovery at all. I was working,
Distractions.
yeah, and I relapsed, and I went on this 8-month-long relapse. My porn addiction had then went to sex addiction. I was having affairs on my wife, and all this. And the one thing that kept me in that addiction, in that relapse, was my shame. I carried a lot of shame in it, and I felt like, man, I can't pray to God because I'm all these things that I've done. So I can't pray. I can't get myself out of this funk. I'm stuck. Well, my wife caught me in all of it. And I went back into CR. Had no choice. I lost my job. I had to get a new job. Got back into Celebrate Recovery, but I was still bound in that shame. Just could not get out of that shame. And I worked through a lot of that with Celebrate Recovery. I did my step work, did my inventory, really showed the light of where that shame was attached to.
Right.
Early 2018, God really started kind of showing me, putting the idea of a podcast on me. I'm like, what's a podcast, dude?
I remember when you asked.
I grew up,
We were in a small group.
I grew up in the backwoods.
Yeah.
I didn't know what high-speed internet was until I moved off for college, and I had no idea what high-speed internet was. So I was like, what is a podcast? And lo and behold, I had met these two guys over in Birmingham who was running a sober podcast they're called Soberholic. And I reached out to them, talked with them. They had me on as a guest to share my story. And I'm like, man, this is it. And I started developing the idea for the podcast. And, well, I don't say I did. God started developing that idea inside me, and I kind of started putting 2 and 2 together and getting 10.
Yep.
And I recorded the first episode in 2018, but I'm such a perfectionist that the episode wasn't right. I recorded on a $20 microphone in my closet. And it was horrible. I was like, man, this thing ain't ever going to see the day of light. And I just shelved it. It stayed as a file on my phone for a while. And one day in 2019, just out of nowhere, it's time to release that episode. I'm like, no, absolutely not. I was like, it is horrible. It's nowhere near what I had in mind. It's not what I was wanting to do with it. And it's like, but it's what I wanted.
Right.
I was like, oh. And I released it. Now, granted, 8 people listened to it. But when I released it, I was like, okay. The next one was easier to release. And then the next one was easier to release. And before we know it, here we are. We're going on our 5th year. And we're being reached around the world, 79 countries, all 50 states, 780 cities here in the United States. And it's like,
That's awesome.
I came on in season 2?
Season 2.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, God, you be doing stuff.
Absolutely.
God, you
be
be
doing
stuff.
stuff.
I mean, it's
Oh,
unreal.
that's stuck now.
It's unreal.
You can't have that one. Y'all try to take the black sheep from me. Y'all can't have
We
that.
didn't.
I know.
We let you keep it.
We let you
Yeah,
have
I
that
know.
one.
We let you keep it.
But to see where God is taking this thing
Yeah.
from that,
And
and
just
it's
God be doing stuff
Yeah.
on
You
this
can't
side.
deny it.
Yeah.
You can't
No.
deny God.
not at
All right.
all.
So I want to tell a story of I guess one of the most impactful moments for me was it was in 2017. My son's mother, she was still pregnant, right? And she was in Vicksburg. And I go over there. They got this thing, this little revival they do every year at this church. And Miss Lisa Cap, she was over had the women's house then. And she comes and tells me, she says, Danny, I want you to go to this revival because I think God's got something you need to hear. So I said, okay. So this guy named John Skipworth is preaching every night. And every night, man, he's just a powerhouse, you know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, that's what I needed to hear. That's what I needed to hear. And so his last night, I'm there. And the beginning of the sermon, he says, he tells us all, everybody, just turn to the guy next to you and give him a 30-second testimony. And the only person I knew there was a guy named Chris Durrell, other than, my son's mother. And so I turned to him, and Chris had been through Mercy House, so it was basically the same thing. We both been on drugs and this and that. So anyway, this guy goes to preaching, and he preaches on the very first miracle of Jesus, where he turned water into wine at the wedding in Cana. And he's walking through it, and he explains that the water pots were what they used to wash their hands and their feet, you know what I mean? And He just breaks it all the way down. Like, so he never told them to clean them out and fill them up with water. He just said, dip a cup of water and get a cup of water out of that. So this servant is carrying this cup up there with 30-foot water in a time where if he hands this to this high official guy, they're going to cut his head off if it's got a toenail in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so in the process of that, it gets there, and it's the best wine the guy ever tasted. You know what I mean? And so he's preaching this sermon. It's really good, man. And he makes the statement. He says, if you're worried about how you're going to turn water into wine, you're worried about the wrong thing. That's not your job. That's God's job. He turns the water into wine. You just have to carry the cup. And right, I just started bawling, right, because up until that point, that was my issue was, how can I do this? Like, I want to do this, but I don't know how to do this. Like, God, how can I do this, man?
Like, you change the water?
And yes,
that was you were thinking, how can I get this?
How can I make something different out of my life? I don't know how. And that guy said that. He said, that's God's job. You just carry the cup. You know what I mean?
Good stuff.
And so that's been, so I've failed since then, but I know that I'll never stop trying, right? That I'll never stop carrying my cup. That's all I got to do.
It don't matter how dirty the inside of the cup is, wine can still come out of it.
Right. You just got to carry your cup. You just got to get back up.
Well, here's
Keep
the thing.
carrying it.
That's the difference between somebody who's failed and somebody who's a success. Is the one who's got the success has stood up one more time after they failed. That's all it is. You fail 7 times, you stand up 8.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
You just keep carrying your cup.
That's right.
You know what I
Man,
mean?
keep carrying the cup. I love it.
I do.
I love it. Keep
Put
carrying
that on a T-shirt.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think we can top that.
Yeah.
I mean that's a great way to end the episode.
Amen.
That's
Keep carrying your
carrying the cup. Well, Danny, I appreciate you coming by.
Yeah.
I appreciate y'all having me, man. It's been an honor.
I could sit here.
It's been an honor for us.
I could sit here for another hour, but I'm pretty sure Daniel will kick us out.
That's right.
Yeah, he's the only one really dressed for the occasion, right? These lights are
You
hot.
ain't seen
Right?
nothing. I've seen this dude in rubber ducky swim trunks and a robe.
Yeah, he's a little smarter than average bear.
Well, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this thing on up and go ahead and get on out of here. It's been a great episode. We hope that you have heard something that has stuck out to you that you're able to take with you this week. We hope that this episode has been a lighthouse guiding you out of that pit of addiction. If you're still in that pit of addiction, if you're there in that darkness, we hope this episode is shining that light so you can see a way out.
So I totally had a brain fart. I am so sorry, you guys.
You want me to take over?
Yeah, go ahead.
For more recovery content, visit our brand new website, unashamedrecovery.com. There you will find addiction resources, new and old episodes of the show, plus some sobriety and faith recovery themed blogs to take you deeper into your sobriety and recovery journeys. You can even donate to the show to help us reach more people still lost in the darkness of addiction. Also, go over and check out more amazing recovery podcasts over at the Take 12 Recovery Radio Recovery Podcast Network. That link is in the show notes as well as on our partners page on the website. And that's all for this episode. Remember to stay sober and above all else, keep on 12-stepping as you remain unashamed. We love y'all.
Josh and Drew.
Yeah, I totally had